Hey everyone, I'm Eric with the Hobby Farm Guys. I don't often make it in front of the camera for our Thursday videos. I normally work behind the scenes while Steve and Brian discuss all sorts of hobby farming topics. But today, they insisted I do the intro as they said it was right up my alley, something I had tons of experience with. Today's video deals with identifying the freeloader who isn't pulling their weight. Wait, what? Did I read that right? How to identify a non-laying hen is up next. Ah, there you go. Don't go away.
Hey everyone, before we start, shout out to Hobby Farm Guy Eric who nailed the intro. We appreciate all his hard work that usually goes unseen. Today's video is all about how to identify and root out the non-workers from your flock. Specifically, how do you identify which hen isn't producing eggs?
While some keep chickens just for show, as companions, or as meat birds, many keep chickens for the eggs. So identifying those birds that aren't producing and removing them from the flock makes space for more productive birds and higher output from the flock.
In my flock, freeloaders are welcome. As my hens get older and they're laying drops, I don't mind. I get more eggs than we can use in a week anyhow, so I don't mind feeding some non-productive hens living out their retirement years in my backyard. But not everyone feels the same.
Yeah, hens eat feed whether they're laying or not. Some people don't want to spend money to feed a chicken that's not producing eggs. And some people may be limited on the number of hens they can keep and may be relying on consistent production from each of those hens to meet their need for eggs. As such, being able to root out the freeloaders is a useful skill.
Before you begin culling hens due to a lack of production, make sure the problem isn't from external sources. Molting, a poor diet, or even a recent change in diet, stress, or waning daylight hours can all result in a drop in egg production.
Once you've eliminated these external sources, there are 3 tiers of tests to determine egg laying: the look over, the hands on, and the no more kidding around I'm serious tier. We'll discuss all three, and we'll start with the look over.
Hens display some telltale physical signs that can be used to help discern egg layers from freeloaders. Simply observing the physical appearance and traits of your hens can often provide a good indication of laying productivity.
That's right, Brian. Producing eggs requires energy, and hardworking girls show the strain. In my flock, the best layers tend to be a little ragged looking. Feathers are made up of protein, and when a chicken is busy laying eggs, their feathers often get a little bit scruffy.
Also, when examining your chickens, pay attention to the head. In good layers, the comb and wattles will be large, bright, and glossy. The head will be trim and refined with large, bright eyes. Poorly colored wattles and combs, a meaty, wrinkled head, and dull, sunken eyes are indicators of a bird that isn't laying well.
Another indicator is the coloring of the legs, beak, and face. Before a pullet begins laying, she'll have yellow coloration around her vent, around her eyes, and in her beak, legs, and feet. As she begins to lay, nutrients are diverted to egg development, and you'll see this yellow coloring bleach out and fade.
It starts with the area around the vent, her eyes and face, which will show noticeable bleaching within a couple of weeks of her beginning to lay. After a couple of months, her beak will begin bleaching out as well, and by 5 to 6 months, she'll begin to lose coloration in her legs and feet also.
If she stops laying, say for a winter break, you'll notice the yellow coloring return in the same order that it disappeared. So if you have a dozen chickens and 10 are looking bleached and faded, but 2 are still bright yellow, you have a good indicator as to who your freeloaders are.
This is most notable in yellow skin breeds and can be masked somewhat sometimes by diet, but it's still a good indicator to pay attention to. You can also look at the shanks of the bird. Good layers tend to have smooth, thin shanks with flat, close-fitting scales. Poor layers often exhibit round, plump shanks that are exceedingly coarse.
A look at the vent will also give you an indication of the bird's laying activity. A good layer will have a large, smooth, moist, almost white vent. A dried, shriveled vent indicates a non-layer. Be careful with only relying on the vent though, as the vent is a good indicator of recent activity, not consistent activity.
Right, a hen that hasn't laid for a month but happened to lay an egg this morning will display a large moist vent, so it's not a perfect indicator. Also, occasionally a hen may display the signs we've discussed: bright eyes, colorful comb and wattles, bleached beak and legs, moist vent, and yet never lay an egg.
It's not super common, but it can occur. What's happening is that these hens may be ovulating into the abdominal cavity where the yolks are reabsorbed rather than proceeding down the line to develop into an egg. So the observation method gives us some great hints, but it's not foolproof. So we move to tier 2, the hands-on.
While the vent inspection helps, it really tells you more about whether a hen just recently laid an egg than it does about her general laying tendencies. And really, what we're interested in is not who laid this morning or yesterday, but who lays well on average consistently.
And so we move to the pelvic bone test. The pelvic bone test is a more reliable indicator of good production than the vent check, as it measures a more gradual change. By checking the spacing of the pelvic bone, you get an idea of long-term, day in and day out egg production rather than what happened yesterday.
In chickens, the pelvic bones form an upside down U shape, coming down on both sides of the vent and extending slightly below the vent. Below the pelvic bones is a soft, bone-free area. Then, below that is the tip of the keel bone. As a pullet matures towards laying, her pelvic bones are fairly close together. But as she begins laying, these bones, which are somewhat elastic, begin to expand to make room for the eggs to pass between them. This widening doesn't happen all at once, but gradually over a few weeks. A hen that is laying well will have a much wider space between her pelvic bones than a hen that's not laying.
Similar to the bleaching of color during laying and its return once laying stops, the pelvic bones will gradually begin to close up and become narrower once the hen stops laying, whether due to seasonal changes, a molt, or any other factor. By checking the spacing of the pelvic bones, you get a view into the egg production tendencies of that bird over the previous few weeks.
With your fingertips, find the tip of the two pelvic bones, one on either side of the rear of the hen. Once you've located them, place your fingers on the surface of the skin between them to measure how far apart they are in finger widths. Generally, the wider the spacing, the better the layer.
Of course, this can also vary. It also gets more difficult as the hen gets older and the pelvic bones begin to lose some of their elasticity and become more rigid. But knowing how many birds you have and how many eggs you average per day, this can be a fantastic tool to gauge laying performance.
Right? So for example, if I'm looking to check my flock and I go through my flock around dusk, when the hens are setting on the roosts and check each hen, it only takes a few seconds. Knowing about how many eggs I'm getting a day, I can quickly discern that, for example, 1 finger width means she's not laying. 2 fingers means she's laying, but not great. And 3 or more fingers means she's rocking it.
Another tip if you're on the fence about a bird is to feel her crop while you're holding her. Good layers tend to spend the day gathering food to ensure they have the energy needed to produce eggs. A full crop likely indicates a better layer.
Another tip is to mark the birds when you check them so you can easily tell who is who later on. If you have a mixed flock of lots of different breeds, it may be easy to tell who's who. But if you have, say, a dozen red sex-linked birds, telling them apart the next morning may be challenging.
Right? So take some colored leg bands with you, and once you check her, slip on a band. Something like red for a great layer, white is okay, yellow is a suspected non-layer. This allows you to monitor them for a few days. If you did the check and slip the yellow non-layer band on one, but then catch her in the nest box several times over the next week, well, it lets you know maybe you made a mistake. But by marking, you know who and what you're looking at and what you're looking for.
And on the other hand, maybe you tag the chicken as a great layer, but yet you never see her in the nesting box. Maybe you made a mistake, or maybe she has a secret stash somewhere because she's found a secret spot she enjoys depositing eggs in more than the nesting box. So keep a close eye on her while free ranging. You may see her slip away to her secret spot. Again, knowing what to expect can help guide you in your observation.
And if your suspicions are confirmed, it's easy to go out and quickly gather up and process the poor performers when you're ready to do so because they're all identified. Or if you're still not quite sure, it helps you easily identify who you want to move up to tier 3, the I'm serious, no more kidding around level.
If looking and feeling haven't helped you decide, the third option is the prove it option. You're simply going to separate that chicken and observe to see if she's laying or not. There are a couple of options here. trap nests, and individually penning.
A trap nest is a nest box that has a door which closes once the hen enters the nest box. There are a number of different DIY designs for these. It allows you to know definitively which hen laid which egg. We're not big fans of trap nests because of the challenges that they introduce.
Right, you don't want to leave your hen trapped in the nest box all day. With no water, she could suffer from heat illness, which means you have to be around a good part of the day to let hens out of trapped nest boxes. Usually, about once an hour is recommended to check and empty the nest traps. Not very practical unless you're a full-time poultry farmer.
The other option is individual penning. Basically, create the same condition, an area where you know your hen laid the egg, but with a little more space for her to move around with food and water. It's not ideal as separation from the flock can cause stress and upset the pecking order, but it is a way to determine conclusively if your hen is laying or not.
At this point, you already have a hunch. You're just confirming it. Leaving the hen or hens isolated for a week or two while continuing to feed and water them as usual will verify that you were correct, or result in a last-minute pardon for a lucky hen if you were wrong.
So those are some tricks to help determine who in the flock isn't carrying their weight. A couple things to keep in mind. It's not uncommon for a good laying hen to skip a day now and again. If you have 8 chickens and are getting 7 eggs a day, you might have a freeloader, or you might just be seeing a hen take a break one day a week, a totally normal occurrence.
Another thing worth mentioning, introducing a variety into your coop makes identifying the non-layer easier as well. If you have 8 chickens but they lay a variety of egg colors and sizes, it gets easier. So you have 2 birds that lay white eggs, 2 blue, 2 light brown, and 2 dark brown. Your suspect list is a lot shorter when you come up light in the egg basket.
If your whole flock is struggling, look to diet or environmental stressors. If it's 1 or 2 birds, it could be that they're at the bottom of the pecking order and are stressed or aren't able to get enough food because they're in the runoff of the feeders by the higher ranking birds. So pay attention to your flock, as they can give you clues as to what's happening.
And of course, some breeds just lay better than others. If high production is important, look to highly productive breeds. Similarly, if year-round production is important, look to breeds that are known to be good winter layers.
All in all, chickens are awesome, and we're still just amazed at how productive many of them can be at producing eggs, while still providing us hours of enjoyment and entertainment just watching them run around the yard in search of bugs and other treats.
Hopefully, you've learned some things in the last few minutes that will help you as you raise your chickens. We hope so. That was our goal. If we hit the mark, please let us know by clicking that like button. It really does help us out.
And I see Eric behind the camera signaling me to remind everyone to subscribe to the channel as well. And of course, until next time, keep on hobby farming.